Whether or not you're a person of faith, it's likely that you associate angels with purity and piousness. Throughout the scripture, except perhaps when it comes to the story of the Fall of Lucifer, angels have always been figures that have exercised God's will to intercede on behalf of humans when they're in need. So as such, it's understandable that they're perceived as spirits that bring righteousness and piety to the earth, and even the entire universe. However, like the Fall of Lucifer, there are instances where these angels have also gone astray. Such accounts may be sparse, but apocryphal texts such as the Book of Enoch contain the secrets of angels such as Samyaza and his fellows who defied the orders of God and were punished for it. It's in those ancient scrolls that you'll find details of how Samyaza and his subordinates were driven by their strong desires to disobey God's command, unaware of the dire consequences that would follow. So in this video, let's go through these pseudo-graphical texts and learn the shocking truth about Samyaza, the angel who led his hosts to disobey God. As we mentioned earlier, the Book of Enoch tells us about the angel called Samyaza. The name Samyaza itself means "have seen" in the Aramaic language. This angel was the aptly named leader of the host of 200 angels known as the Watchers. This group was charged by God to carry out one very specific task: to observe his humans. This was at a time when the human race was just developing following the departure of Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden. Despite the scandals that followed, humanity somehow remained pure, growing steadily while remaining free from warfare, sorcery, or incantations, and had begun to live peacefully with one another. This pleased God, who now considered them dearer than ever. And in an attempt to ensure that humans continued to thrive peacefully, he appointed the Watchers to look over them from afar. The only rule they had to follow was not to mingle with humanity under any circumstances. Samyaza was named the leader of the Watchers and was responsible for enforcing this rule. On paper, that seems rather simple, doesn't it? But believe it or not, it was harder than it seems for the angels to keep away from the humans. While Samyaza did enforce this rule for a while, cracks began to appear in the Watchers' will to remain far from the human beings when the Watchers began to notice how fair and attractive human women were. And as you might have guessed by now, it didn't take long for the angels to come together to voice their wishes to take some of these earthly women as their own. Overcome by lust, they soon forgot God's instructions and started making plans to descend to the earth. At this point, Samyaza, their leader, did try to intervene by telling them of the harrowing consequences that would await them if they went through with this treacherous plan. But it seems his concerns were rather selfish, as he was interested in these earthly women too. To say the least, it proved too easy for the others to change Samyaza's mind, and as soon as the other Watchers agreed to take the fall with Samyaza in front of God, he was well on board. Once the others made the oath with him that they would all share the brunt of God's anger together, the Watchers under Samyaza began their descent to earth. Driven by lust, they wasted no time sleeping with these women that they were so enticed by, with not a single care about the world-changing events that would follow. Perhaps the first pebble of what would become a world-shifting landslide was the fact that one of the angels, Azazel, seemed to have descended with ulterior motives in mind. More interested in destroying humans than sleeping with the women, he introduced them to warfare and weaponry, sorcery, spells, and incantations, fabrication of mirrors, uses of stones, paints, manipulation of eyebrows, etc., things that God had never intended to ever teach them. Although it's not clear if Azazel acted alone, it's he and Samyaza who would stand out individually when the hammer of God falls. Nonetheless, after Azazel taught humanity these things, he also gave them reasons to fight amongst themselves, and this brought about an unprecedented era of chaos and violence. And believe it or not, this was only the beginning of the chaos that would ensue. Now, while Azazel was busy leading humanity astray, Samyaza and the other Watchers went straight to the women and copulated with them. This act of the flesh between humans and angels gave birth to gigantic, wretched savages known as the Nephilim. Samyaza even had two Nephilim sons of his own, Ohia and Yahya. One of the worst hybrids ever, the Nephilim were a barbarous race of giants that had no restraints when it came to their unquenchable thirst for destruction. Razing anything that came their way to the ground, they destroyed land, animals, fish, and humans alike. And when they were done with that, they began turning on each other. And the alarming part, even the Watchers were having a hard time dealing with these powerful monsters. Such was this era of chaos that saw those still remained pious cry unto God. Seeing his angels go astray and humans crying out for him, God then charged his archangels Uriel, Raphael, Gabriel, and Michael to begin the cleansing process that would bring about the great deluge of the days of Noah. Uriel was told to protect Noah and prepare him for the flood. Raphael was put in charge of dealing with Azazel, and Gabriel put the Nephilim to rest. And last but not least, Michael's assignment was the leader of all the Watchers' mischief, Samyaza. Michael wasted no time in telling Samyaza and the other Watchers of God's judgment. Enraged and disappointed that his angel brothers could even fathom going against God, he relayed God's message to them: eternal damnation and genocide of their Nephilim children. Such was the punishment that they faced. Seeing as they were no match for Archangel Michael and his brother archangels, it's believed that the Watchers surrendered without much of a fight before they were taken to meet their fate. Such was the fate of Samyaza and his Watchers. That being said, this is not where the story ends for Samyaza's sons Oya and Yaya. Their story can be found in the Book of Giants, but as the texts are incomplete to degree, most of the story is open to interpretation. These texts, however, tell of the dreams that Nephilim have and how Enoch tries to help them translate them. It starts off with the Nephilim coming to realize the error of their ways as they're plied with their destruction. However, some believe that the dreams are in reference to humans and some of the Watchers like Azazel. Others believe it might be best to find Enoch and asked him for help with these troubling omens. To their dismay, Enoch confirmed that the destruction they dream of will befall them if they don't change their violent and evil ways. As the story is incomplete, we're only able to give details of fragments of the story that follows. Some of these fragments contain the story of Oya and Yaya, who were said to be so large that they not only did survive the Great Deluge, but they also slew the Leviathan, the giant sea monster of old. Alas, they were eventually put down by the archangels after all. Such is the story of Samyaza and the chaos he and his cohort brought upon the world. Going against everything we know about their kind, it's interesting to see that even such pious creatures could actually be led astray by impulses that were considered foreign to them. Maybe this is why the Book of Enoch was removed from the scripture. After all, how could we truly look up to the angels if they seem to be unable to maintain their piety? It makes you wonder what other secrets have been left out of the Bible, doesn't it? Well, that's all for today's video. Be sure to like and subscribe so you can be notified about our next videos. Trust me, you don't want to miss any of that.